Hello, 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 hello. Test it. Welcome back, KA Sports Boxing fans. This is African Boxing Unmasked. African Boxing Unmasked, where we talk about different aspects of African boxing. Like I said last few times, we spoke, we're going to extensively talk about African boxing. We are just on the surface right now talking about promotions. And today, we talk about a very, very, very important aspect of boxing promotions. In the past two episodes, we spoke about who a promoter is, what is boxing promotions, what are some of the duties of a promoter. We also spoke about event organization and some of the logistics, talking about venue selection and transportation, food, etc. As you can tell, I'm under the weather. That's why you didn't hear from me last week, but the show must still go on. So, still on promotions, and today we're talking about matchmaking. Matchmaking. What is it? Why is it very important for the career of a boxer and also the success of a promoter in being successful with the boxer? Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. So, who is a matchmaker? Before we talk about the art of matchmaking, let's talk about who a matchmaker is. So, lots of people, especially in our continent of Africa, and beyond, outside Africa as well, consider themselves matchmakers, both young and old, and are saying they are matchmaking. So, who is really a matchmaker? A boxing matchmaker is a person who is responsible for arranging and coordinating boxing matches between fighters, and not just the fighters. They have to work with the promoters and then the managers. Their primary goal is very simple. They are supposed to create competitive and appealing fights that will engage the fans and benefit all those that are involved. So all those involved include the boxers, the fans, the manager, the promoters. There are several factors that they have to consider. And with our limited time, we will try and go through a little bit of it. Um, but they have to consider things like the skills of the fighter, the skill level of the fighter, the records of fighters, the weight classes, and then the fan demand for the opponent. If you've been following boxing, we recently heard that Canelo refused to fight Skull. Why is that? There are several reasons for that, but that's not what we'll be talking about. But you wonder if the top contender should be fighting the champion. But Canelo instead vacated the IBF title. He has his own reasons, and there's a reason for that. That goes into matchmaking. And also, matchmakers work with promoters, boxing commissioners, to make this happen. And sometimes too, they are independent contractors. I have matchmakers call me all the time asking for fighters. So that is a matchmaker. That's their job. We're going to dive a little bit into the art of matchmaking, and then later we talk about matchmaking in Africa specifically. So, what are some of the factors to consider? It's a lot. We will just touch on a few of them, but basically, the fight usually has to be competitive, right? It has to be competitive, and then bring the fans along also, because it's the fans that are paying to watch. So it has to be competitive by the fans. Sometimes you've seen fights that the fans like, but the money may not be good for the boxers involved, or they are handlers. Example: Canelo versus Benavides. Canelo versus Benavides. So um, sometimes it's just not all about a competitive fight. You have to consider the money too. All right. So what are some of the factors that has to be considered when matchmaking? Definitely the skill level. You have to balance the fighter's abilities to ensure that the fight is competitive. In our continent of Africa, sometimes this aspect of matchmaking is often lacking. We always go looking for the win, the win, the win for our boxers, and they really fight non-competitive opponents. And these have repercussions when the boxer gets somewhere. In the beginnings, it may be okay, but as they get more fights, their type of opponents that they are fighting gets evaluated. It gets it gets evaluated, and that goes into oftentimes decisions on the next level for them. So the abilities have to sometimes fight. You cannot have um, let's say a 5-0 fighter fighting like a 31-2. There's a bit of a discrepancy there. Also, obviously, the weight classes. The fighters have to be in the same weight category. Sometimes fighters can move up and down, but when it's about two jumps up, it kind of raises eyebrows. All right. Also, the type of style that these fighters use, you have to make sure that the styles really are intriguing. Sometimes people stay away from southpaws because they can be dangerous. But you keep giving your boxer orthodox fighters, when it really counts and they go and meet a southpaw, because they may not have fought one in a competitive fight, they may struggle. I must say I'm going to rush a little bit here, and this is one of my favorite subjects, but time. But hopefully we do this better in the future. But experience also matters, and when I spoke about the 5-0 and 32-0, that makes really a big difference. With you have to match boxers with similar levels. Popularity matters. Popularity matters. Benavides and Canelo, the fans want it. Does it mean it's going to happen? No, it's not. But I know that in Ghana coming up, Michael Ansa, also known as Bullet, is going to find Derek Quay, show love. This is a very, very popular fight. The fans love it. And it has been made. June 15th, Bukom Boxing Arena is going to come up. The place is most likely going to be filled. We just got to wonder if the other aspects of it, of matchmaking fit. But it's an example of very popular matchmaking. Also, the career trajectory. This is one of the important things that I want to talk about. Helping to build a fighter's career by providing suitable opponents. I don't think I'm going to finish matchmaking today because of time, but the career trajectory. I have seen fighters get to a place where they want to move up, but they cannot, because they look at the opponents they have fought, and they tell them that these are weaker opponents. They tell you, you fought nobody, you fought Cantomanos. So if you are building a fighter and you keep giving them weak opponents just to get the W, it gets to a point it actually matters in their career. They cannot move on. So, career trajectory has to be considered when choosing an opponent for your boxer. It can't all be just cheap opponent that will just give you the win. That can be a problem when it gets to somewhere it matters. Also, you have to weigh the risk versus reward. This is a tricky one. As much as you want competitive opponents for the career trajectory of your boxer, you have to weigh the risk. Is the opponent so good that they are going to come beat your boxer that you lose your investment? You have to weigh the potential risks versus the reward. And there are different ways to do this kind of matchmaking. There are secrets to matchmaking where you can get what you want without the risk or with minimal risk. And of course, things to consider. You have to consider the scheduling. You have to coordinate the dates and venues of the fight. For example, if you're in the United States and you want an opponent from Ghana, do they have a visa? Can they get in early so that they can take part in all the fight activities? All that goes into considering the opponent for your boxer. All that goes into matchmaking. Some matchmakers will call you and straight up tell you that I want a boxer who can fly next week. That's the work of a matchmaker. They have to make sure this happens. And then, of course, promotional considerations. The matchmaker has to make sure that he's meeting all that the promoter needs, the manager needs, the television networks. Is this boxer that you are getting for your boxer a place where they really understand event production for boxing? Where you tell them that, hey, we need this boxer to be here for footage, to get videos. This is not a boxer that's going to be like, oh, I can't do it, I can't do that. So these all go into matchmaking. And then finally, as I spoke about it, the fan appeal has to be huge. The fan appeal has to be huge. It has to be a fight that will create general public interest so that they can come. They pay for it so that they can attract sponsorships. These are the 10 things that I came up with that you need to consider when matchmaking. Obviously, I'm speaking a bit faster because of time, but we'll get through it, I believe. What are some of the challenges in matchmaking? Now, a lot of us, especially where we come from, may not understand matchmaking. When a matchmaker approaches a manager or a promoter asking about their fighter, they normally have a budget that has been given to them by the other promoter. They don't tell you that. They do not tell you that. So in Africa, though, matchmaking can be a challenge because of lack of funding and investment. And if it affects the ability to organize high-profile fights. You cannot get the best to fight the best if the money is not good. That is one of the biggest challenges we have when we are matchmaking in Africa. Money, 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 money. Especially in Ghana right now, where the economy is very tough for almost everyone. You cannot give peanuts to a boxer and expect them, especially a boxer with a good caliber that can help the trajectory of your boxer. You cannot go with peanuts. So money is a challenge in matchmaking. And of course, as I spoke before, regional disparities. Ghana and in some African countries, boxing is very centralized. So the movement traveling is not an issue, but once you get international, that can be a challenge. And then also regulatory and government issues, commissions. Depending on where you are fighting, they may want the boxer to have a certain criteria. The sanctioning body may want the boxer to have a certain criteria, which, excuse me, the boxers or the opponents may not have. That makes it difficult. I've seen matchmakers say, oh, their last fight has to be a win. It shouldn't be a technical knockout. It should be at least 8 rounds. All these things matter. Okay? So in those are some of the challenges, but I feel like in Africa, our biggest challenge is just the mere misunderstanding of the craft of matchmaking. I have 5 minutes. I'm going to be quick. We got to understand that when we are building boxes in Africa, yes, money is an issue, but there are ways to go about it. You cannot give your burden, your upcoming boxer, after 5 fights, still giving them, for my Ghanaians, Achiagbeshi. They're going to get to 10-0, and they may not go anywhere. I have seen African fighters ranked by world sanctioning bodies like the WBO, and they stay up there and never get called for contention. Why? Because they are not regarded as formidable opponents, because when we look at the kind of opponents that they fought, they are considered weak opponents. We got to understand the craft. You cannot fight your gym buddy in kind of a sparring session and get a title and expect that you are respected. I have seen this where a sanctioning body has rejected the number of opponents that have been sent because they consider the opponents that they fought very weak. We got to do better. We got to consider why we are doing the matchmaking. We got to consider the career of the boxer. Excuse me. So who are our fighters fighting? Yes, they can fight gym buddies in the beginning, ones here and there. But they cannot keep it on forever, especially at the peak of their careers. They got to be challenged. You got to do good matchmaking. Yes, it costs money. Boxing is an investment, sometimes not even rewarding. But if you have a belief in your boxer and know what you're doing, you may be able to get them out there and recoup your investment. But at some point, we need to change the way we matchmake. I try to get a famous matchmaker on here. I must still try and work on him. I think he has some gems to share. Maybe next week, we will see. But if we don't get him, next week, we will talk about a different topic still under promotions. But there were some scenarios where sometimes fighters have issues with their promoters. In 2021, for example, there was a Namibian boxer, Julius Ndongo, who accused his promoters of failing to secure him suitable opponents and opportunities for him. At some point, the boxers are going to realize that what you are doing for them with the weak opponents is not going to take them anywhere. So that leads to contractual disputes and legal challenges. There was also another notable case in Africa where Zolani Tete filed a lawsuit against his former promoter for breaches of contract, and he was seeking compensation. Why? Because they felt like they didn't do what they were supposed to do for them. You know? But that's African boxing. In a nutshell, in terms of matchmaking, we're going to get back to it. But next week, we move on because we have a lot to cover. We're going to cover marketing, advertising, and sponsorship in the space of boxing promotions. If you just join us, this is African Boxing Unmasked. Continue following, liking our videos and our content. We bring you everything you need to know about African boxing. We criticize to improve here, and we unearth our dirt to also educate. My name is The Boxing Doc, and I'll see you next week. And again, if this is your first time, this is African Boxing Unmasked. I forgot to mention that we are sponsored by Afro Lounge. Afro Lounge is a lounge in La Palma in Ghana. Check it out. They are open Thursdays to Sunday. Again, see you all next week. This is The Boxing Doc.